So with evolutionary psychology, let's just say it's 30% solved. Let's say, because we don't know enough about genetics, whatever, but there's 30% in there that's like actually really good. At some point, some of us need to go talk to the girl. At some point, some of us need to do the group project. At some point, some of us need to lead our company, need to lead our military unit, need to lead our battalion. At some point, some of us need to get married. At some point, some of us need to pick a partner. And because evolutionary psychology is only, let's say, 30, 40, 50% solved, oh, well, fuck it. Let's just throw it all out because genetics are too complicated.
It must be magic.
We just debunked a video, or we just debated the relevancy of a video where a girl went on for 3 hours and 15 minutes trying to debunk evolutionary psychology. And I just want you to ask yourself a question. Why would someone want you to not know about this?
Exactly.
Just ask yourself the question. Like, stop real quick. Okay, so we're going to go over reasons why women and men might cheat, why people might use you for money, why people might lie to you, why people might murder you, where jealousy comes from, and what attraction triggers are. But someone doesn't want you to learn about that. Yeah. Just question in your mind. Like, before we get into the relevancy of, if you guys want to go back and watch the video, there's certainly studies that I've seen from evolutionary psychologists that are nuts. I'm not saying that's not the case, but I had never even heard of those studies because I read Stephen Stewart Williams and David Buss, and some of the ones about spatial rotation, and some of the ones that had to do with like women's faces becoming more symmetrical during ovulation. I'd never even heard of that. So it felt a lot like she cherry-picked some of the low-hanging fruit and then went out, and then at no point does she ever go after 37 culture study. Does she go after parental investment hypothesis? She doesn't even talk about Stephen Stewart Williams at all.
No, it was a mishmash of crap when she's drinking like fucking 6 beers while she's doing it.
You know what? The beers made it good. I don't have the problem with beers.
It was quite entertaining. I'll give you that. But I think more to the point is there's people don't want you to know this. They don't want you to ask the questions. They don't want you to have the conversations that we have at this table like every other Thursday. And I think that's one of the strengths of this show is like we're not here to kick girls off. We're not here to it's not outrage bait, at least not intentionally. Sometimes it gets to be that way, but not intentionally. And the thing is like we're trying to do a new kind of show with this where we can actually have these substantive conversations. But in the meantime, we get demonetized by YouTube for that.
I think Mooncat doesn't cognitively know that she doesn't want people to study this. I think in her mind, what happens is when she sees men studying things like hip to waist ratio, no matter what number we came up with, it was going to be a problem for her because that number is now empirical, it's dispassionate, it's algorithmic. She doesn't like that. The idea of taking human sexuality and turning it into algorithms and numbers, at some point there is a number. There is a certain number of men, Milana, that you would find attractive and a certain percentage that you wouldn't. There is, at some point, we get to numbers, even no matter how uncomfortable it is, and someone's supposed to do that work. And it's okay that someone does that work. And I think internally for her, she sees people doing that work and she gets kind of an icky feeling. Yeah. Can't describe it. So what she does is she makes fun of the people who do that work by putting on funny glasses and making funny names instead of understanding deep down she doesn't want anyone to do that work because those discoveries lead to things that make an egalitarian society more difficult.
And her emotionalism just shines through all the way to the end of that. The best part, I mean, the icing on the cake was when she was coming after Ben Shapiro at the end of that video. And Ben Shapiro was talking, he literally says, there's the truth, and then there's, whatever your subjective thing. He's like, no, there is a the truth. And her whole thing, she just rejects the idea that there's any kind of like substantive, objective form of truth, right? Yeah. And that right there is really the difference between an emotionalist argument and an empirical argument.
Well, the other problem is at some point, someone has to, like, Isaac Newton has to stand on the shoulders of Johannes Kepler, and Albert Einstein has to stand on the shoulders of Isaac Newton, and Erwin Schrödinger has to stand on the shoulders of Albert Einstein. At some point, you have to say, okay, this is an objective truth, because if I don't have one, I can't build a building.
But I don't feel like gravity should work.
Yes,
I'm not feeling it today.
I don't feel gravity.
I'm not doing gravity today.
You guys understand? If we can't write down objective things, then we can't build on those things. Yeah. Again, every year there's a new, better, faster, more efficient version of an engine, a car, an electric drivetrain, a rocket that goes into space. You notice your internet. If you guys remember back in the 90s, trying to download a picture would take like 3 minutes. Your high-speed internet gets faster. The transistors get more complex. How does that happen? It's because there was an objective truth, and then you said, okay, let's write down that objective truth, and then let's improve on it. That we need to iterations, and we need iteratively improve these processes. But if we never admit to an objective truth, what foundation do we have to go to the next iteration? We have none. Yeah. So with evolutionary psychology, let's just say it's 30% solved. let's say, because we don't know enough about genetics, whatever, but there's 30% in there that's like actually really good. At some point, some of us need to go talk to the girl. At some point, some of us need to do the group project. At some point, some of us need to lead our company, need to lead our military unit, need to lead our battalion. At some point, some of us need to get married. At some point, some of us need to pick a partner. And because evolutionary psychology is only, let's say, 30, 40, 50% solved, oh, well, fuck it. Let's just throw it all out because genetics are too complicated.
It must be magic.
And Ben Shapiro represents evolutionary psychology perfectly, doesn't he?
What do you mean?
He's a religious, he doesn't talk about psychology.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
That's the other thing.
Like, the man is
at all?
exceptionally religious, and she's using him in an evolutionary psychology video. By the way, if you guys want to go back, and I would love for Mooncat to respond to this, there's this one part where she shows me, I believe it was me, and then she shows another, it was Fresh and Fit, then she shows me, and then she shows
it's this show, right?
Sterling Cooper. Yeah, she shows Sterling Cooper.
Yeah,
then she shows David Buss. Then she shows whatever podcast, and then she shows another one. And it was like YouTube, Buss, YouTube. And what she's doing is while you guys aren't watching, she's trying to mishmash all the YouTube content creators in with the PhDs in evolutionary psychology.
Yes.
And so that way,
red pill gumbo.
That way, no matter if anybody in YouTube says something stupid, then you stamp that on David Buss, and that was the point of what she's trying to do.
Yeah.
Do you notice, guys? I'm telling you, guys notice where if you are, Melania, you can speak to this being a lesbian woman. A lesbian woman goes through different things than a gay man, right? Her experiences in life are different. A bisexual woman goes through something different. A queer man goes through something different. These people all have different experiences. But when you survey people, do they survey gay men? Do they survey lesbian women? No. It's one thing they survey. What is it? What is the one thing that they survey? Does anyone know? It's LGBTQ. That's it. Mm-hmm. They put them all together, because if they put them all together, if one of them suffers, then we all suffer. And this is like a progressive tactic to put all of these alternative lifestyles together. And I get it. I understand from a political standpoint, it makes sense. Mm-hmm. The thing is, what's happening here is she's trying to do the same thing, but the opposite. She's trying to take everyone who has a viewpoint that isn't hers and mash it together, and then taking the most low-hanging fruit and then saying, this is what you are all responsible for, this crazy thing that this one person said. So now, whenever Myron Gaines says he doesn't think cheating for men is bad, therefore evolutionary psychology prescribes that cheating isn't bad.
Right.
And that's what
therefore David Buss supports cheating.
David Buss supports cheating. So because of that, because of what's going on, even if she believes it's passively, if you let her get away with it, and a lot of people were asking, why are you even platforming this woman? I was like, I don't have 500,000 subs. That video just hit a million views.
A
million views. No, she was platforming me. By the way, Mooncat, thank you for putting me in your video. I appreciate that. But the point is, that may be some people's first exposure to what I think is a very, very important study of evolutionary psychology. And I didn't want their first exposure to it to be, oh, this is just a bunch of MAGA hat-wearing racist bigots who are out there just hating women. When I believe David Buss is a Democrat. It just doesn't make it. And Lita Cosmides, last time I checked, had a vagina. This is crazy to me that's the direction we're going.
I was going to say that I probably lock horns ideologically with a lot more evolutionary psychologists, because they all tend to run liberal and Democratic.
Yeah, they're liberals. but that's the point. That should give it more credibility. The fact, I guarantee you right now, William Costello, Chris Williamson, Rollo Tomasi, Myron Gaines are all in the same video being criticized, looking at each other like, what? What? How the fuck are we in the same video? You know what I'm saying?
It's that Spider-Man meme.
It's like Spider-Man. We're like, what do you mean? It's so crazy. It's like Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage are both the bad guy at the same time. They can't both be the bad guy.
Yeah.
You understand? So it was so funny because it's open, whether or not she recognizes it, it's opened up a dialogue between William Costello, Alex Datesyke, myself, Mac and Murphy,
even me,
even Rollo.
90% of these guys.
It's opened up
Does she even talk about Mac and Murphy at all?
No, she doesn't talk about Mac.
Of course not.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, but she doesn't. But the thing is, though, Mac and Murphy, the problem is she was kind of clout jacking, because remember, Mac and Murphy actually has to do with evolutionary psychology. Right. And Mac and Murphy has a lot of he goes into metadata. He's very difficult to criticize. What's easier to do is to go after Ty Lopez. What's easier to do is to go after Ben Shapiro, who aren't evolutionary psychologists. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And they're both more popular than Mac and Murphy. Right. So I get more bang for my buck. I go after a low-hanging fruit, call them an evolutionary psychologist, And then I get the extra juice from the fact that they're more popular than Mack and Murphy. Whereas if I go after Mack and Murphy, what happens? Mack and Murphy looks at the metadata for some of these studies, and he's very, very thorough. So, like,
And he's actually going to respond and debunk.
for sure. And Mack and Murphy would run circles around her. And so because of that, she's not going to go after Mack and Murphy. Just like she didn't go after Rollo, because after the time she did a Manosphere video, Rollo did a 3-hour debunking of that.
ripped her
Well, that's
apart.
not worth. But that's not worth. It's not that she's afraid. It's not worth her time. It's way easier for her to attack the edges. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's easier for her to attack the fringe than to go out the middle. If she was going out the middle, she would have started. She wouldn't wait 25 minutes into the video to talk about David Buss. She would have started off with David Buss. She would have gone after the evolution of desire, and she would have gone after the 37 culture study they did in 1989, showing all these different cultures, even though they were independent of one another. In all those cultures, men were more interested in casual sex than women, and women were more interested in men's ability to procure resources than the other way around. She would have attacked that head on from the gate. She would have gone after the ape that understood the universe and fucking the murder book. Like, she would have gone to the murder next door. She would have gone right after that, but she can't. So she attacks the fringes and then makes you think that the fringes are the whole, and goes so far out of bounds that she starts talking about people who don't even believe in evolutionary psychology. She starts criticizing behavioral psychologists, and many of which don't even believe in Evo Psych. It was one of the craziest things. There's probably behavioral psychologists like, how the fuck did we get thrown into this video? This is crazy.
That's
like,
what
what's
my
going
background
on?
is in behavioral.
Yeah, but that's the crazy. That's the crazy part. It was basically one more time. I don't mind that you guys are getting sold to. Just know that you're being sold. And in this case, just know that when people are trying to make an argument like this against you, what they're going to do is take everything that they don't like and put you into one big blob and say, do you see that all this kind of stuff is your
Called
fault?
a straw man.
And it's a straw man fallacy. And to me, like, what I saw was her version of YouTube bigotry. Basically, she takes anyone who doesn't believe what she believes and puts them all together. There's like, my criticism before was, I know probably more about evolutionary psychology than 99% of YouTube content creators, but I don't know anywhere near as much as Buss or William Costello or
Steve
Steve Williams. I can't. I don't deserve to be criticized. It is the equivalent of saying I go out with my friends and play flag football and I drop a pass, and therefore, because they saw that, all Americans can't play football. That's the equivalent of what they're saying. I should not be part of this discussion at all. I appreciate that you put me in the video, Mooncat. I appreciate that you did it, but you should have stuck to evolutionary psychologists, because the title of your video was not I debunked bad science or I debunked questionable psychology. The title of your video was I debunked evolutionary psychology.
If you're watching this, I have a gift for you. Hit the link below and I will send you a private invite to my free community. And yes, it's absolutely free.